Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Rachel Koller Croft. Rachel is the author of Stone Cold Fox and We Love the Nightlife. She's also a WGA award-nominated screenwriter. Rachel lives in Los Angeles with her husband, Charles, and their rescue pit bull, Juniper. Welcome back, Rachel.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm so excited to be here.
You were here for Stone Cold Fox. We didn't really know each other back then, but we got to talk about that super fun book. Now, this is, you say you like to write about bitchy women.
I do.
Which I appreciate. We're not bitchy women, but we can be bitchy women. And you like to write about bitchy women. This book's bitchy women take it to a whole new level. So tell our listeners and watchers about We Love the Nightlife.
Sure. We Love the Nightlife is about two best friends who have totally outgrown their friendship after 50 years together. And the friendship goes completely off the rails when they decide to open their own nightclub together in London. And they just happen to be vampires.
I was wondering when you were going to get to that part.
It really ups the stakes. No, I do love to write about bitches and glamour, which is always said with love. I like villainous, sneaky, conniving characters because they go after what they want, and it's so fun to read about. And I just love a girl that goes after what she wants.
There's like 5 of them in this book. There's like 5 women who just go for what they want in this book, which I love.
Well, that's one of the reasons I love vampires too. Like, I feel like this was a big swing for me. I like vampires and supernatural as a consumer in certain respects. Like, I love scary movies. I'll watch any scary movie whenever it comes out. I'm a big fan. And as far as books go, I always loved Charlene Harris's books, the Sookie Stackhouse novels. And I love Interview with the Vampire and the Anne Rice book. I admittedly did not do Twilight or Vampire Diaries or things like that. I mean, I'm sure they're great. I liked the more like goth kind of metal vampire.
Yeah, they're dark. Yeah, they're dark. Those are the darker vampire books.
I love vampires because they're hot and mean, and they're always rich because they have all this money over all this course of time.
Right.
And they have expensive taste and like nice things. And they were human ones, which I also think is really fascinating from the supernatural perspective.
Right. And actually what's interesting about these women is we'll focus on the 2 main characters. They come from such different worlds, right? I mean, and one of them was alive in the 1850s, and one of them, was a modern day woman, she became a vampire in 1979, 1980. Well, right at the turn of 1980.
Yeah.
So, which I love how everyone talks about. That's the other thing. This whole like disco, and we talk about that as the sort of the high life. We talk about this all the time. You're too young, but we talk about the 80s being like the time to grow up. Like I turned 10 in 1980 and being like, woo, that was like the time to, that have your sort of teenage years was those years. So it's so fun. You do all this fun, like retro stuff, party girl stuff, Rachel. It's okay. So I want to know like where this idea came from. I mean, like,
okay,
holy cow.
It's so funny. When I pitched this to my editor, it was kind of the last one I tacked on because it wasn't fully fleshed out. I just had this idea of 2 vampire girlies opening a nightclub, and that's really it. Because I had just watched, I'm sure it shined through in the novel, but I love disco music and dancing, and I kind of idolized that time even though I wasn't there for it. So I had watched the Studio 54 documentary that Ian Schrager is in, and he was one of the co-owners of Studio 54, and now he's a big hotel guy. And I loved the documentary. Like it had all the stuff I was looking for, but I was so taken with the friendship between Ian Schrager and Steve Rubell, who opened it together. I'm pretty sure they met in college and they were just like these two young guys that were like, let's open nightclubs together. And they
Yeah.
were so, obviously they went to jail for tax evasion and got into trouble and things like that. But I started thinking, I was like, God, what would it look like if two women opened a club like that? And initially I was like, oh, that could be a really fun TV show. But I feel like, I was also thinking about what drives the conflict here. And I'm like, oh, friendship breakups are just the fucking worst. Can I say the F word on your podcast? Sorry, it just flew
Totally.
out.
Say it as many
It's
times
just,
as you fucking want.
I mean, they're just the worst. It's really
Yeah.
tough. But I
Hmm.
feel like the marketplace refrain sometimes is, oh, that's not high stakes enough. You can always make a new friend. I think people just think romantic relationships sell better, family relationships, or not sell, but like people want to read about those more.
Right. The stakes feel
So,
higher naturally, unless you're dealing with vampire friends, and then the stakes are pretty
right.
high.
Because then that's where the vampire element came in. I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to get ahead of that particular, like, I mean, how do I make this idea undeniable? Right. And I was like, oh, what if they were vampires?
I mean, it's so great.
He's so fun. And it just cracked open the story in all of these ways that were totally unexpected to me. Like, I thought I might be staying in the 70s, early 80s the whole time. And
Mhm.
then when I got into the two voices and thinking about the structure of this book compared to my first book
Yeah.
was psychotic. Like, I've never done the note card, like
Yeah.
making sure everything's together. Like, I'm glad I did it. I know I can do it now, but like to make this my second novel was a little nuts because it was dual point of view. One of the girls is English. It takes place in London. It spans 50 years, but also a dabbling of the Victorian times, and it's supernatural. So it was a
Yeah.
lot of things to juggle.
Well, at least you're not going to work. You're not going to experience a sophomore slump because you like hit it out of the park, right? I mean, that's the big
Oh,
concern about the second book, I
well,
think.
I
I mean,
figured it's different enough where like I think people that loved Stone Cold Fox should love this book. I think they're
totally.
like spiritually similar, even though aren't in the same world. I think the tone is very similar. And then on the flip side of that, I was like, well, people that like vampires and horror and spooky stories, I can kind of bring them into the fold too. So I
Yeah.
do want to write books that feel unexpected. That's kind of what but still sound like me. And I think that's the balance I'm trying to strike. So I do feel like this was a big swing, but I love how the book turned out, and I'm really, really
I
excited for.
mean, oh yeah. So tell me about so the process for you, like, okay, so you basically were like, and I know your editor's fabulous. You were like, she's going to worry that the stakes aren't high enough. So I'm going to up the stakes by making these people vampires, which, by the way, I consider myself a super creative person. That would never have occurred to me. I would have been like, well, I'll just make them sisters, or you know what I mean? Like vampires. Like, yeah, that's a whole new level. So once you kind of figured out that and you got to go ahead, how did you decide? Because yeah, you do go back between, you go back and forth between the two characters, Nicola, who is our older,
Yeah.
established, Victorian era vampire, and
Mhm.
Amber, who is our sort of modern day, younger vampire. And that there's this fabulous thing that happens, the power dynamic, right? There's the sort of older, and you see that in lots of the vampire movies too, but it is like these two women. For a long time, Amber was just like a party girl.
Yeah.
She didn't develop it, didn't figure out what she really wanted until sometime during their friendship, right?
Yeah. I mean, the power dynamic, I mean, there are things like I'm sure if people are fans of Interview with the Vampire, like I was totally playing with the trope of Lestat and Louis and the Maker and their companion. But like I do feel like a lot of vampire fiction, and this is fun. I like hot guys, but like
Yeah.
it's very male driven.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I was gonna make this girly pop vampires. That was like priority number one. So I started thinking
Exactly.
about the problems that can arise in a friendship that isn't really fully solid from the beginning. I mean, one of the morals of this story, and I love a good time friend. We've all had good time friends, but they're not the people you ask to watch your dog when you go on vacation. You
Right.
probably don't tell them your deepest, darkest secrets. You call them when you want to, like, you just got to go out, right? You got
Yeah.
to go to a party. You got to go out and have a good time. That's what your good time friend is for. But sometimes, because you have so much fun with those people, I think you can feel like, oh, this is my best friend. And when they do something that you weren't expecting, which I don't want to talk too much about Amber and Nicola's,
No,
specific problem,
right,
it sort of like warps your worldview and you're like, oh my God, is this person actually my real friend?
you're
Uh,
right.
so there are these like, it's funny, it's a vampire book, but it's quite grounded for a vampire
It
book.
totally is, right. It's actually, I mean, you see the themes of, and like you said, these are not male relationships. Female relationships are so different than male friendships and female male relationships. This is really about the women in the story. And there's two sets of women. There's the secondary women who show up a little bit, that I also, Margot and Tasman, there's sort of a secondary dynamic, which is fun. But I mean, it all becomes so much more complicated when it's women. We're so much more, I don't know even what the right word is. It's the layers
Complex.
are different. Complex. There you go. We're so much more complex.
It's not
But
always so cut and dry, like
right.
it's challenging at times.
Okay,
And
so
it's like for girl too. Like I love all my girlfriends, but I
yes,
do feel like I've had a couple like big endings to friendships and they're just, I don't know, it's more confusing. I don't know, with a
yeah,
romantic breakup, it's pretty, I mean, they're terrible too, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
But there is like it's just different. I think there's more language around it. You
yeah,
can talk about like the process about how to get through it. Like it's this more tangible thing.
yeah,
Whereas like a friendship is sort of has its own language and sometimes there aren't
right,
words for it. And you typically don't have like a breakup talk. Like, I don't know,
right,
it's different. It's just different. And I think that sort of uneasiness can like stay with you in a way that like I do feel like, I mean, I guess there's some people like the one that got away, but I feel like you can get over a romantic relationship
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
most of
for
the time.
sure.
But sometimes with friendship breakups, it's like always, well, what if this had worked
Yeah,
a little bit
right.
differently?
And I
Um,
also think there's
Next
like
story
this.
circles back around,
Yeah, and there's this voice, you're always sort of pulling it apart, like, well, where exactly did we go wrong? Because I think romantic relationships often have sort of a real blow up, but
Mhm.
like friendship relationships, you can kind of tie it back to littler things that happen that
Yeah.
maybe create a big kind of blow up. Anyway, I agree with you. It's super interesting dynamic, and I do think in friendships, like in romantic relationships, there's often a power dynamic, right? That shifts, or somebody, or someone tries to assert themselves, or okay. But I totally interrupted myself because what I was asking you, um or we interrupted each other, I don't know where we went off, but I was asking you the process. Like, I want to hear the process for how
Oh, okay.
you, so once
Yes.
you figured out your two main characters and you were going to do it alternating timelines,
Yeah.
how did you do this, how did you manage it?
Okay. So initially, I was going to set this book in New York or LA, probably
Okay,
New York, but since Stone Cold Fox is in New York, it's like, oh, it could be fun to do like LA club scene, 80s, blah, blah, blah. But I was living in London at the time for work and my husband's work. And my husband is half English. I've spent a lot of time in London. We've been basically living there. And I was just like, why don't I set it here?
yeah,
Because the vampire element was able to be such a bigger part of the mystery and the twists,
hmm,
kind of the lore of Nicola in particular. Like she
right,
felt more powerful because she was older. Like that just, the setting really, really worked for this story. And everything I mentioned in London, every like club or restaurant or pub, like I'd say 90% of them I would like spend time there. Like was
okay, so
it.
they're real places. So we
Yes.
can we can have a bar crawl
Yes.
through We Love the Nightlife.
Yeah, but some of them are members only, and you have to pull some strings, which I was able to
Okay,
do a couple of times. But then there were others that the one place I didn't go, I haven't been to Tramp, but I will one day.
I was
I
gonna say, we need to be
yes.
like, have you read this book? You're in this book. Now you need to let us in. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
That's doable, right? Bucket
yeah.
list.
So as
That's
far as
so
the
fun.
process goes, I built out the characters of Amber and Nicola, and how I do that is I sort of just, I don't know, I tick around on a piece of paper and like talk about like their past and their parents and some of the stuff, which I'm sure you know, it doesn't actually make it into the book, but it's
Of
helpful
course.
for you as you start writing them and make decisions for them, what they would
Yep.
do and which direction they would go. I wrote many, many, many drafts of this book. It was
Okay.
I've never worked harder on anything else.
Yeah.
I've never cried over like over anything
Right.
else. Like last summer, I had no fun. I was chained to my desk. I felt bad for my husband because I was like Jekyll and Hyde. Like I was just really, honestly, not in a great way.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to write like that again. I felt
Yeah.
like I'm just, maybe you know this about me, but I'm not really interested in suffering for my art.
Right.
I'm
You're like,
very
I
much
like
into
having
like
it fun.
luxury and a good time. And I mean, writing is hard no matter which way you
Right.
slice it. But there was something that was like extra challenging about this book for me. But I will say it ended up being all worth it because I'm so happy with the finished product.
Yeah.
But I have so many deleted scenes from this book. Like there are versions, I mean, I love some of those deleted scenes. Like one of the big rewrites I had to do was just like create a lot more suspense. Initially, and my husband really liked this version. He goes, "This is like vampires meets Once Upon a Time in Hollywood." Like we're just hanging out with them. And it was fun and it was fun to write,
Yeah.
fun to read, but like I needed to like ramp up the thriller aspect,
Mhm.
which is why I kind of got into the like Amber like from the get-go wants to
Mhm.
escape Nicola and hatch her
Mhm.
plot.
Mhm.
Because there were things about like, oh, this might spoil things, so I'm not going to talk about it.
No,
But
don't,
they're just
yeah.
like there's two characters in the book, Roddy and Courtney, that like totally changed to service the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, but I felt I don't know, like I knew I could do it. I knew I had planted all of these seeds. That was one of the things that was like frustrating slash magical eventually, which I find about writing where you feel so stuck and you're like, how am I going to
Right.
fix this fucking mess? And
Yes.
then something happens where you see what you've done for yourself, maybe not on purpose, but your subconscious does it for you. And there
Yeah.
were things like there's a twist in the book that it's funny. I think people weren't expecting like a big twist like that in this vampire book. Like I've heard that people are very stunned by the twist, and that's such a thrill because I feel like as a thriller writer, when you're writing your twists, you're like, am I going to pull this off? Because
You're
you know
right.
it's coming, so you're not having that. Um,
Right.
but yeah, there were things in as draft by draft that I like pulled and kept. And then I did that note card thing. I had so many note cards of every little seed, every scene, every twist, every like, and just, I mean, I was moving them around like crazy. I had them all over the floor. I looked nuts. I was,
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I think we have to acknowledge the fact that, like, it, right? Like, you had to go through that. First of all, it makes you a better writer for the next book. And you're also like, you made a commit. It's like you made a commitment to like this book, to your editor, to your agent, to the whatever publisher. And it's like, you have to do it. And you're like, all I want to do right now is just like throw this all in the trash and be like, that's it. I quit. And yeah, you're up to your eyeballs. You can't quit. So I mean, like, what do you do? Like, I think everybody handles these things differently. But what do you? I mean, obviously, I think crying, ice cream, wine, those things are all like highly recommended from my arsenal. But what do you do when you are like,
I mean,
what
I'm just
what isn't
very
working?
like, if I have a deadline, I'm gonna hit it. And like,
Yeah,
I mean, I made a schedule because I had another pretty big rewrite to do closer. Like, I didn't have as much time as I'd hoped. Let's put it
yeah,
that way.
yeah,
And so I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do. This is all the work I have to address. And I just like broke it out. I mean, I truly had like no fun last summer.
yeah,
I was working like from sun up to sundown and but I got it done. Cause I knew, like you
yeah,
said, I made a commitment to all of
yeah.
those people, to my readers, and like most importantly, like to myself. Like I'm gonna
Yes,
do this.
right.
I want to have a big book next summer. I know this is there. I know I can get it. Um, but it's like it's a confidence and self-esteem thing too. Even though when I felt really shitty, like I don't know, I reference all the time like Michael Jordan is my hero. And I think of him a lot when I'm struggling with something because he
Yeah,
just has, I'm his number one fan. I just think he has like a commitment to excellence. He does what he says he's going to do, and
yeah.
he's best at what he does. And like being an author isn't competitive in the same way as being a professional basketball player, but I want to be like Mike.
You wanna be the Michael Jordan of right. I
Yeah.
mean, but it actually is true. I mean, and there are people, who say they wrote a draft in 30 days and then it, hit the times, and I don't know if that happens, and if it does, wow, you just caught like a shooting star. Congratulations. For the rest of us, it is like what you said. It's like, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. Okay, wait, hold on. This might work. And it's just like in it and in it and in it.
Like this
Right?
is very chip away. And like, again, I've only written 2 books so far. I'm working on my third, but like just comparing the 2 experiences, Stone Cold Fox, I don't want to say it was easy to write because it's not easy to write a book,
Right.
period. But Stone Cold Fox is completely chronological. There's a handful
Right.
of flashbacks, and I'm in one person's voice
The
who,
whole, right.
not me, but she's like a combination of myself and my friends. I'm very comfortable writing in her voice. Like I could write 100 books as B. Like it just,
Right.
a lot of that came very easy to me in the
Mhm.
drafting process. And here I just had to be a lot more methodical and,
Yeah.
because I want them to sound completely different. And then
Right. Which is hard.
I made Amber American and Nicola English.
Yeah.
I felt like I could capture those, and specifically Amber is Midwestern. So I was like, okay, I think I can really like play into that and little turns of phrase and things that like sound, like someone from Wisconsin and stuff.
Totally.
And then really play into Nicola being a Victorian era
Right.
vampire. Still keeps it fresh and modern, but she would have little colloquialisms that nobody would say anymore. So
Right.
that was very helpful in terms of figuring out their voice and structure and making sure they were differentiated. And then on top of that, I made sure Nicola was always talking about the past and Amber's story was in the present. And I thought
Right.
that was helpful for me as the writer. And I think that's a helpful guide as the reader.
And did you write every other, like, I mean, obviously you revised it so many times, but when you were writing, were you like, because I've done this both ways, where you write all the scenes, and like if I'm going to have
Yeah.
8 of one person, I might just write all of those, or at least map them out, and then write the others, and then figure out kind of where they go. But if it's really every other, which this isn't quite every other, but it's really almost 50-50,
It's
or
every
feels
other.
that way.
Yeah, I'm
Is it
pretty
every
sure
other? Okay.
every other.
Uh,
It seems like it's not because there's like those 4 Nicola chapters from her like very far past that are
yes.
like, different.
Okay, that, yeah. But I
But
mean, so then did you alternate?
I did for the first, like when I was setting it all up, I did because I needed those things to ping pong off each other and it was informing me as the writer. Like I like half-ass outline because I always go off script. I just do.
Mhm.
My brain works different when I'm drafting as opposed to outlining. And when I'm
Yeah, I
drafting,
don't, yeah.
more exciting things happen.
Yeah.
I always know where I'm going though. I always have my ending. I knew the ending for Stone Cold Fox and I knew the ending for this book. So that is
Yeah.
helpful to me. And I think it allows me to kind of throw my
I
outline or
I
whatever.
agree, I agree. Like, you have, like, yeah, you just know where the goalpost is. I think that's important. But I agree with you that it's just not, it's it doesn't feel as natural to me to try to stick to an outline, because I feel like the characters develop and then they say kind of what's going on. Like, they make their own decisions, don't you think?
There's just things that I'm like, okay, I'm right. Like sometimes the outline's right, truly. But then other times I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I think she's gonna go over there instead. And then it like, screws up the rest of the outline. However, it always kind of finds its way back to the end because I
Right.
always knew this book was gonna end the way it did.
Which
Um,
was, yeah, and we're not talking about that, but it was, that's super. We're not
I
talking
know,
about
and
that.
when things weren't working in the draft, I was like, I don't give a fuck. This is the ending of the book. I
Yeah,
have to make
I
this
gotta
work.
get
Love
I
the
gotta get
ending,
here.
not changing it.
Um, well, I have another question, because it feels like when you wrote Stone Cold Fox, that was your first novel, your debut, and probably you didn't have. I mean, you wrote it like with aspiring. You hadn't signed an agent with it. I imagine you hadn't sold it, right? So it's all
Right.
those like, it's all the like, you're doing this like kind of. The stakes might feel much lower. I mean, you want to publish a book, you want to get an agent, you want to sell it, but it's different when there's like somebody on the other end, like, where's the,
Yeah,
right?
there's just an expectation. I mean, even this like process of like the few weeks before, I don't know, like I've done it once. So I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like, oh, don't have any expectations. I'm like, have we met? Like, this is
Yeah.
now, like, because, and truly, I had such a juicy debut year. It was so fun. So I feel like this book has a lot to live up to in my mind. But then also, I worked so hard on it that,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I'm trying to be cool and chill about it, but I probably won't be.
I've never been cool and chill about any release ever in my whole life, and I've had like 16, so
I
I
know
don't think you need
a
to be
lot
cool.
of books.
You got to celebrate it, and and I think you do have to kind of shut down the haters. Like, we got to like not, you know.
Oh, I don't care about it's so fun. Like, I don't know. I know some authors, and I don't begrudge anyone that's like this, doesn't like to look at their reviews and stuff like that. But like, not not to bring my man back into the conversation, but like Michael Jordan, like the haters, like fuel him. So like
Yeah.
I look
So you're
at
like
like these reviews
you
and I'm like, okay, I guess your reading comprehension skills need some work. Like I
right.
feel like it doesn't hurt my feelings. And aside from that, I do think people are like allowed to their opinions. And I think
Sure.
if you're writing something that literally every person likes, I don't know, how good is it? Like, I feel like that's not going to have a strong POV, and I really want to like have a strong POV in my
Right. People are going to either love it or hate it. I actually think that's the best kind of book. I mean, you think about those, the big books that have done really, really well. People either love them or hate them, right? I mean,
yeah, totally.
that's like Gone Girl, and people, it's visceral the way people respond to that book, right? Or, I
Right.
mean, so I think you're absolutely right. But I sometimes do, like if it gets a little downer, I'm like sometimes the one stars, if they're dumb one stars, I'm like I love the one stars. It's like it didn't download. I'm like, well, like that's my fault, right?
Thanks.
You know,
Or
you're like,
didn't finish. Like, okay, thanks for grading it when you didn't even get to the awesome ending.
yeah, that's on you, man. But the ones that go into all the details about, how the author should have known, those ones I'm kind of like, oh God, like we
Yeah.
haven't lived through enough to like now have to suffer through this right now with you. Come
Well,
on.
people are so nasty on the internet. It's really shocking sometimes. Where like not even just book related, just generally, everyone's very like I don't know, like everyone needs to
Yeah.
have more fun, I think.
People need, right. And they need to party girl it up a little bit more. That's
Yeah,
insane.
really.
Okay, tell us what you're doing. Like, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on? I'm just like, these books are
Um,
so different. No,
I
just
know.
that
I
it's not
will
like
say
either of them.
I'm keeping it a little close to my chest for
Totally.
two reasons. One, I'm so excited about the idea I could scream. And secondly, it's still really early days that like I feel like I don't have the language to talk about it. But
Sure.
I will say there is like I've written like mother-daughter and like friendship, and this is a story about a marriage. So
Oh, is your husband afraid? Is he very
no,
afraid?
he's my husband is truly my number one fan. He is
Mm.
like, this is the best idea. He thinks everything I do writing wise is the best ever, which is nice. But he also, because my husband works in entertainment as well, and he does give like really good feedback, even challenging feedback sometimes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do appreciate, but
Yeah.
he really believes in me, and that's very helpful. So he's not scared.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that you're going to sort of go in for a new. Let's talk about like what it's like to, because you talked about how V was so much more of you. So you're channeling now these women that are so different. And sort of
Mhm.
like, what how do you like when we're talking about sort of like different personalities of women, you do sort of really a lot of it has to do with sort of how they grew up, how they were treated by their, which I think is true of all of us, right? We're really very
Yeah.
much products of our environments. So talk to me about that. Like that was because these two, Nicola and Amber, are so different, but
Mhm.
we can go back to their childhoods, right? And their
Right.
parents. So, is that like an informing, like, is that one of the things you think about? Because I think it's truer for women than it is for men.
Yeah, I
How,
think about it a lot. And it's not just like a cheap plot device either. Because I feel like, oh,
mm-mm,
if your characters are doing bad things, they have to have like a reason. And
yeah,
I think that's true. I mean, I will say like the character of Mother in Stone Cold Fox was just a psychopath. Like I didn't even talk about her past
mm,
self. She was just nuts. But like Amber and Nicola, like I understood why they were really attracted to each other because they liked something that they saw in the other that they didn't perceive themselves to have. So Amber's really into Nicola because Nicola's fucking cool. She like has
yeah,
very assertive. She knows what she wants. She goes after it. She's independent. And when we meet Amber, she's like married. She went from like her family's house to her husband's house, and she's
right,
going out at night because she wants to feel something. And she feels like Nicola's just got this like even before she knows she's a vampire, I think she has this like amazing independent.
right,
And
right,
Nicola looks at Amber, who just is like, it's like moths to a flame. Men would like
yeah,
people just like her. Those people that are just
right.
sparkly wherever they go.
Yes, I
That's
do.
who Amber
I
is.
think
And
you're one of them, Rachel. I think
oh,
you're
so
I think, I mean,
sweet.
you're not Amber, but I think you have that, like, I can see that, like, just all that, like, love and just like wanting to experience everything and just be happy and being able to live in the moment. Like, that's really powerful. And I can totally see. And of course, Nicola is like, I mean, it's when that woman, first of all, like for Amber, who no resources of her own, right? I mean, that's a big thing in this book actually, is like the idea of like, if you have if you're a woman and you have resources, and you can really, and it's a real yes, and it's a real thing in this world for us, right?
Yeah.
If you're a woman who has to depend on a man for to support you, that's a,
It's it's something. I mean, I write about money a lot, maybe not
yeah,
overtly. Well, I guess Stone Cold Fox was a lot about money, but I just feel like it is something that sometimes in fiction is sort of not addressed. I'm always like,
yeah,
what's going on? Like, listen, I love like a rich person. I mean, I wrote a rich person book, but like I write a lot about underdogs, and Amber in this
right,
case is an underdog, women that are scrappy, that are trying to like
yeah,
rise above their station in life.
right,
And
right,
I consider myself one of those women. I think that's probably
yeah,
write about them a lot. But yeah, there is definitely this like power dynamic, not just because Nicola is the one that turns Amber into a vampire. That's not really a spoiler. You guys will.
find that
Um,
out, yeah,
Nicola has an estate. She has big money, old money. Like she has all of the power, and
right,
Amber doesn't have any of it. So, there's this question, well, why is she staying? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why she's staying, and they go into it in the book. But there is like a power imbalance, which accounts for a lot of Amber's decisions and a lot of
yeah,
Nicola's decisions, because
and I
Nicola
kind
was
of,
being in power.
yeah, and exactly, as does every powerful person, really, right? They kind of love to be in power, and I kind of love that you've made a dynamic that's usually the way we read it normally is a man, like a powerful man with a less powerful wife, or sometimes vice versa. But I think what you've done with the women, and like I said, there's multiple situations of that in the book, which we won't address, but I think it just is so interesting to see, and different people handle it differently, and some people really like to be, they are comfortable being kept, and some people you can just see how it rubs them.
Yeah, because I think Amber was totally cool with it for a while. Like,
Yes,
especially when she marries Malcolm, like initially she just thinks this is her husband at the beginning, and she meets
right,
he's wealthy, and like she didn't come from a lot of money. So it's like a huge like upgrade in a lot of ways. But then she realizes, oh God, he's a nice guy, but
boring,
it's really
right,
boring.
right,
Like I
right,
want more. Like she reminds me a little bit of like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. Like I want more than this provincial life.
yes, yes, exactly.
And
And
Nicholas,
he's British, he's going to take her to London. I mean, it all sounds so exciting.
we would all have done it. We all would have gone with him. I know I would have. But yeah, and I do really even though Nicola is considered the baddie and Amber's kind of the protagonist, I really love both of them. And
Mhm.
that's something I was very cognizant of while writing, even though when they were doing bad things to others or to each other, I still wanted to make sure that they had their human sides on display, and
Yeah.
why they were such good friends at one time, and that it's sad that it's like progressing in this way that gets so dark.
And they're not all, I mean, Nicola's not like, she's not all bad, right?
No,
There's lovely parts of her. She just doesn't, she just wants to keep what she feels like belongs
she
to
doesn't
her.
have like the capacity to reckon with why she is the way she is, and that
Exactly.
a lot of people are like that.
Yeah, like arguably maybe
Liars.
more, yeah, most maybe. Okay, it was so exciting. Okay, so listen, I know, tell our listeners where to find you on social media, because everybody should be following you. Because first of all, I love what you're doing with, you're doing all these funny things with vampires, all the like teeth
I'm
everywhere.
trying.
It's so fun. So tell people where to find you.
Sure. I'm primarily on Instagram at Rach Koller Croft. And then I am newly on TikTok. I'm not nearly as active. I get shy. I don't know. TikTok, the thing about making these videos, it's super fun, but it's very time consuming. It could be a full-time
Yes,
job.
I
So I'm
know.
dipping my toe into TikTok, and it is very fun. But those are the two I'm on primarily these days. And it's really fun. And I'm making little videos and pictures and all this silly stuff, and more to come.
I can't wait. That's so fun. Well, this we're going live with this on August 22nd, which means this book is out in the world
Oh,
right this minute.
good.
You can go and download your copy or order your copy, and you have to look at the cover. And if you're listening to us, you got to go look at the cover, because it's these two, sort of just the lower halves of these two beautiful female faces, with one little fang that shows, which is gorgeous. So they've done such a good job with both of your covers. Hello. Don't
Yeah,
you
they
feel like
really,
that?
like, the vampires thing too. I was like, okay, like I sent like a mood board that was very like Studio 54 and cool and stuff. And I was like, it's vampires, but like with taste, like it's
Yes.
not, I didn't want any blood on the cover or anything. So then when I just saw that little hint of Fang, I was like, perfect. It's
Yes.
perfect.
It's
And
so
they look like
perfect.
sisters. Like We Love the Nightlife and Stone Cold Fox look like sisters. And that's what I
They
want.
do, and they should look like sisters. And we got this sort of like incredible neon, which sort of points to the disco and to the. It's super fun. They've done such a great job. So I love it. Right, you've hit it out of the park. I really feel that way, and I think that's a really hard thing to do. So I'm so sorry that you suffered last summer. I hope
It's
you don't
worth it.
ever talk, but it's worth it. I think it's worth it. I think it's totally worth it. So, congratulations on We Love the Nightlife. I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to see who's going to make this into a movie.
Hopefully me, what I'm manifesting for myself, well, I'll definitely write it. I won't sell it to anyone that doesn't let me. But I want to direct it and I want it to be a movie more than anything. So we're putting it out there.
Put it out there. That's right. Manifestation, girl. That's what we are all
Right.
doing right now. I love that. Well, congratulations. I can't wait. I want to be there when I'm on opening night. So just so you know, set aside a ticket for me. Everyone, this was We Love the Nightlife with Rachel Koller Croft. And if you haven't read Stone Cold Fox, which Rachel was on the show for Stone Cold Fox when that came out, so she's a repeat. And this one is so super fun. So thank you for joining us, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
And everyone, we will see you next time on Killer Women. Bye.